Dog has got the most terrible bottom issue. Over to you, Rich.
Hello, listener. Welcome to what is which podcast of late?
This is 199. This is not the second podcast.
No, it's not the second podcast, but it is a second podcast of the autumnal semester.
Fourth.
Okay. So you haven't included me in the
Where
last
have you
three.
been?
Not
We've
here.
told everyone you went fishing.
Not on the Wiggly Cage, evidently. I did. Last week I was fishing. Tonight I'm going fishing down to Devon. I'm trying to catch taupe off the shore.
Taupe?
That was one of my goals for this year. I wanted to catch salmon off the Wye, and I had 3 this year, and I wanted to catch taupe off the shore, and as yet I haven't had a bite, but it may.
What's
happen.
a taupe like?
A taupe is like it looks slightly similar to a blue shark. They're the shark family, and people would say, "Oh, taupe is a small shark." It's not really a true shark in the same way as a bullace or a dogfish isn't a true shark, but they are shark family. But they battle like billio from the shore. You catch, boat fishing. They're pretty commonplace, really. I wouldn't bother fishing them because you can't eat them. You put them back, but they scrap really hard off the shore, and it's a real challenge. So that was something I've set myself this year. So it's a question of scraping down to Devon and staying with my mate, and off we go down to various little secret locations off the North Devon coast.
Anyway, welcome back, Rich, to the Wiggly Sofa. This is the Wiggly Podcast, and today I'm joined by Toast, Noah, Ricardo, and
Farmer Phil.
Ray!
Now then, we've got another review, and it says, "Thank goodness that Heather and Phil are back after their break and are looking at cows. Yippee!" Although what Rolf Harris is doing, panting in the background, I do not know. So this is from Yay, the Return of the Cows. 5-star review. What was Rolf Harris doing in there last week?
Well, it was quite steep, and I was trying to catch up. So I think it might have been me with the didgeridoo board, but I don't know. It could have been the dog. We don't know. But anyway, Rolf Harris.
It's probably Toast.
But I've got a little tip for you. You must go and buy a Rolf Harris painting, because apparently they're going to be very expensive in years to come.
Right.
Oh, you've got a new phone, Rich.
New phone, Hev? Yes.
Is it expensive, Rich? Did you spend?
No.
Was this one of your luxury items that you've saved up for?
As you know, I've been a bit hopeless with a mobile phone, but I'm trying to turn over a new leaf. But my last phone, because it wouldn't hold charge for more than a couple of hours.
Because it was 15 years old and the size of a small house brick.
It was no good. And so subsequently, I thought, well, I've got to get myself a new phone. Got to get myself a new phone.
Gosh, that looks expensive.
Sunday evening, a couple of weeks ago, Sarah and I watching a bit of telly.
Yeah.
Adverts on telly. Sun newspaper. Get your tokens. 4 tokens, free mobile phone. Sarah turned around and said, "You should do that." So I thought, right, make a conscious effort. Went past a garage en route to where I was working. Popped in, bought a newspaper, bought 4 newspapers, or 3 other newspapers subsequent to that. Got myself 4 tokens for a new mobile phone, plus £10 free credit from Orange.
So you are such
Everyone's
a
a winner.
Sun reader,
Everyone's
are you?
a winner.
That's what you want to...
No, I don't read The Sun. And having bought it 4 times, I would definitely say it's not worth buying. For sure.
Did you enjoy the bosoms?
I did. Pastry is the only thing that's worth looking at. It's nice, and a nice little leisurely glance at that, but the rest of it, I tell you, it is shockingly crap, The Sun. Because there are some, inane things that are quite fun, but yeah, some of the stuff in there is just dodgy as it can be.
You're tight.
But yeah, I've got a fabulous little phone.
Painfully tight, isn't it?
So that's good, isn't it?
Anyway, I've got a little tip from you, which Michael gave to me before we came on air, which I thought might help you. Oh gosh, sorry about that smell, listener. That's toast. Oh, good Lord. That's awful, isn't it?
I can't smell anything.
How can't you?
I expect it'll get to you in a minute.
Sure, it's not the cat.
I actually feel quite faint with that. I think she's been eating something terrible. But anyway, moving on. Oh,
God, can you smell anything, Phil?
Not yet, but I know what's coming.
You will do. Anyway, little tip for you. With your new phone, free from the Sun, it's an Orange phone.
Yeah.
So Michael says that what you need to do is on a Wednesday, you text the word film to 241 and you get 2 for 1 into a film.
Right.
In the cinema. That's a
sounds
handy
good to
Wiggly
me.
hint. Now, for those of you that wonder what the Wiggly Podcast is for, it's always here to give you those take-home handy hints. And this one is to go to the cinema. Now, this week we've got to find out about Gambia is Good Jig, where we have some Gambian lads on the Wiggly sofa talking about their project. Well, I want to know about chicken sex. This is really important because I've got a new cockerel and I don't know what he's going to do.
I do.
I'm hoping Rich will explain that. We're going to talk about the postal strike, but first of all, buzzards. Farmer Phil, tell us about the buzzards.
Well, last year, Monty was with me on the plough a couple of days and here and there, and between us, we got up to a maximum, the highest number of buzzards following the plough, picking the worms and catching the odd mouse, we got up to was 13 at any one time.
Right.
Which at the time, I think I probably said on the podcast, I was pretty staggered
That's
about.
a lot, isn't it?
But we've exceeded it this year.
Right.
The other day, I counted 17 buzzards following the plough.
That's a lot.
Now, from my part, buzzards are great. They're majestic birds. But to have that level of population of them and the increase, they eat mice, all sort of small animals and things like that. And some larger ones, they'll take rabbits.
Yeah.
But if that number of buzzards are eating all these things on the ground, then presumably the food source for things like barn owls and other species that want to eat those things is diminishing.
Yeah.
And also I would assume that ground nesting birds, things like that, so that the chicks are running around on the ground, that's good buzzard fodder, I would imagine.
It is, yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because earlier in the spring this year, our neighbours down below us, Mandy, watched a buzzard systematically take all the chicks from a hen pheasant that was bringing her chicks out into the orchard, and had a lot. And there's nothing that the pheasant could do. They just mopped them all up. So I think in those instances, those birds tend to be a little bit more savvy. The chicks are programmed to be more savvy and behave in a certain way that sort of disguises them a bit.
I wasn't
more,
necessarily thinking that the buzzards were the sole criminal in this, on the basis that the vast increase of things like badgers probably doesn't help either. But what did occur to me was that, embarrassingly for us in the countryside, in the rural situation, it really reinforces the fact that before, when gamekeepers and probably farmers used to shoot the odd buzzard, which kept the numbers down, and now because the penalties for being caught shooting a buzzard are so serious,
you'd lose your gun,
and
they'd take your gun away from you, wouldn't they?
Well, they'd probably jail you, but the fines are thousands and thousands of pounds.
$2 grand, isn't it?
But anyway, the upshot is that this method of sort of underground control, as it were, is no longer taking place. The population has exploded, and we've seen the same with badgers, and I think that we're building ourselves a big problem without even talking about TB.
I had the same conversation with a group of women from WI Glade Street, and it made me laugh because one of the women, as she was, because they had their business before the speaker, and one of the women said that she was organising this event to, I think, visiting the tulip fields in Holland, and anybody who wanted to go, let her know as soon as possible. But the timing was around lambing. I always find it's quite funny. You only go to rural WIs, these women, they're all so involved in their farming. But we had this great discussion at the end about this massive population explosion that we experienced recently from buzzards. Because they are so common now. You see, if you go past a field, you often see a whole bunch of buzzards just sat in the field.
I think it's a problem where we've got these species that have no predators at all, that we're just making ourselves a problem. I read the other day that where they've been reintroducing the red kite and feeding them, the farmers are starting to say we're having a serious problem because of the numbers of red kites involved, that they're taking perfectly good lambs.
Really?
And so that these species, whether they be raptors or badgers or whatever, that have no predators, so there's no population control in place, where are we headed to, and how on earth are we going to sort the problem out when we realise that it is a problem?
It does seem to be a real irony to me that there's these rules and regulations that mean that there's no management, and yet when I was driving home from London the other day, going down the M4, I reckon about every 4 yards there was a dead raptor on that motorway
Really?
for miles and miles and miles and miles. It was just like raptor after raptor after raptor after raptor after raptor after raptor.
Really?
I reckon there was 1,000 easily.
Good God.
And there we are, going on and on and on about being unable to manage a bird, and yet really cars are wiping them out in certain areas and managing them. It seems the wrong way round,
I
doesn't
think
it?
that's probably an indicator that they're hungry. I mean, years ago, you wouldn't have seen a
could well be,
buzzard
actually.
eating worms. You would have never seen a buzzard following the plough. Gulls, hundreds of them.
Yeah.
But you never saw buzzards. And the
Yeah.
fact that they'll come for worms now, to me, indicates that they're hungry.
Yeah.
And I think they are.
Dear listener, you have a look when you're next on the M4, well, any motorway, but particularly the M4. I reckon there's thousands and thousands of them
Yeah.
in the middle.
Right. That's interesting. I don't know what the answer is, Phil. I mean, it's difficult to condone the shooting of beautiful animals, but the reality is that we seem to have this sort of ingrained passion for reintroducing predators. It's like, let's reintroduce loads of otters into a space, which they have actually had a dramatic impact on mink populations. I think, the mink... I haven't seen a mink for years on the Y, I used to see them all the time, but since otters have come back, much fewer mink.
I don't think people appreciate that these animals, which in their particular environment are top of the tree with no predators, they're just going to run wild, and they will do serious damage to the populations of other things below them, and I think they are.
What would be a great answer to control buzzards is to introduce or reintroduce our European eagle owls, because eagle owls do have a bit of a passion for
They like a
chomping on
juicy
buzzards.
buzzard,
They
do
They do, yeah.
I'll tell you what, it'd give you a fright. I've seen a European eagle owl. That'd give you a fright if it flew near you, wouldn't
They're
it?
decent-sized
Big bird.
creatures, yeah.
Listen, we're going to see Princess Anne on Monday.
Exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Have you met Princess Anne before?
I've not met Princess Anne, but we're going to take her a posy. No wire, no water,
Right,
and a bit of vintage lace,
okay,
and give her a posy.
right. Will you meet her in person, do you think?
We
Will she
will.
come
We've
past
got
and
the
shake
full
your hand?
schedule. As you are downloading this podcast, dear listener, I shall be dressing up at the dentist. It's teeth day on
Really?
Monday.
How are the
before
chompers these
Princess
days?
Anne.
Are they-
Oh, well,
not
it's been a
much?
bit of a nightmare, but never mind. They still come out.
Oh, nice, yeah. You should have just seen what I saw then, listener.
Hopefully the implants are going in just before Princess Anne. So I'm going to dress up in my frock, go to the dentist, get them all screwed in, and then rush to Rotherwas into a shelter. We've got a shelter, Wiggly Shelter, where we've set out some bits and bobs, some flowers and some worms and things, and meet Princess Anne, have lunch, and then tell her about rural business and the plight and the enthusiasm and the whatever. Well,
The gubbins.
The gubbins.
Okay.
Yeah. Here we go, Rich. Here's Big Norm's review. Can you see it?
Big Norm. Okay, when was this written?
Last week.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Morning to you both. He says, the podcast. I found this far more educational and entertaining than the BBC's Farming Today programme on Radio 4.
Woohoo!
So we'll download more. Heather, you are so bubbly and natural. It's a pleasure to listen to you gushing about your achievements.
Thank you.
Good Lord.
You.
The land and the animals. Your questions to Farmer Phil, in brackets, if unscripted, both naive and insightful and delivered with a fantastic accent.
As if I could script my questions.
I love it.
I love it.
Farmer Phil, I got the impression that your knowledge has been gained through years of practical research, which to my mind allows you to reel off the subject matter more from your experience rather than tertiary education, i.e. other people's knowledge. On the whole, a new avenue for me to explore. Knowledgeable information from experience is far superior to speculative education from those guessing or try to bleep your senses. A lifetime of which has caused me to be the sceptic that I am. I hope I have not been too serious. I like the fun and laughter more than anything, but tend to be somewhat staid with my writing letters. All the best, Norm Coates.
Oh, thanks, Big Norm.
I should just add that Big Norm, being of Antipodean descent and therefore supporting the Australian cricket team, sadly to no avail this last summer,
Shame.
is a regular contributor to Twitter.
I want him on a podcast because he's got a Sean Connery accent.
Has he?
Yeah.
Sean Connery's Australian?
Yeah, because he was born... No, he's Scottish. He was born and bred not far from his original address. He's got undertones of Brum because he lived there for 4.5 years. He's got a bit of Yorkshire because his dad was born and bred there. He's got a bit of Leicestershire because his mum was from there. And he spent nearly every summer holiday there in the 50s. And Australian because he's been there since 1978.
And he's very self-analytical.
Oh. Listen, what I want to talk about is chicken sex before we go on to Gambia is good. As you know, Rich, I've got a new lovely cockerel, a light Sussex cockerel.
Yeah.
But my mystery is I can't quite get my head around how the chicks are going to appear in the eggs.
Right.
So I thought, as you were here, you could give me the birds and the bees like my mum did all those years ago, but on chicken sex.
Okay.
Because loads of people don't know this, I'm sure. Because I can't see where's the bits.
Chickens have just a vent.
An event
they don't know,
or
like
event?
They have several events during the course of the day, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you know, if you're a cockerel, then you have quite a successful days, really, in terms of procreation. But the cockerels don't have a penis. I think they have a cloaca, like a duck. I'm not 100% on that, but I know they don't have a penis. There's no sort of insertion as such, you know. But obviously, what they'll do is they'll sort of saddle up to a chicken. And you know, drop their wing and go kind of slightly sideways around the hen, you know, just a little bit of a courtship thing. And often the hen will sort of drop down onto her hocks and sort of, you know, avail herself to the chap. And
is she up for it daily?
Oh yeah, they tend to get.
Does she only like it every now and again?
It's called treading, usually with hens. And what can happen is if you get an over-amorous cockerel, then they have favourite chickens. So if you have an over-amorous cockerel with big spurs. And because they're mating with these...
Spurs?
They're the great big sort of...
Claw?
Yeah, the spiky thing that comes from the back of their heel,
yep.
if you like. If they're mating too frequently with certain hens, their favourite hens, then they'll often injure the hens along their backs, you know, putting huge, great striations, great big stabbing wounds in their backs. And before now, I've had to put little saddles on the birds to protect them from the cockerels that obviously enjoy those specific birds.
Why don't you
separate them from the cockerel until their backs heal up?
Why don't you put some socks or something on his
spurs? Well, you can't. Put some socks on the spurs. In theory, you could cut off a spur, but they will regrow quite quickly. And also, there are implications with cutting too close to the leg because of, you know, from bleeding and things like that.
But anyway, she's up for it daily.
So the hen will the hens will get mated. Usually, mating will occur more. You know, it goes off in the winter time. You know, the birds aren't particular, and they'll start to mate heavily in the spring. You know, throughout the summer. If you're incubating eggs, often if you're too earnest and you put your eggs in sort of February, March time, they won't be fertilised. So it's often better to wait until, you know, April, May, June to incubate some eggs, or if you've got a broody hen, put them under the hen around then to be sure of a good fertility rate.
So just step back a bit. So we've done the dirty deed.
Yeah.
And so now how am I going to know if the egg is fertilised then?
Well, you won't know immediately. You can tell if an egg is fertilised because it has a little white spot on the yolk. But when you put your eggs underneath a hen or in an incubator, you will be able to tell after a week by candling them. And candling is simply shining a bright light through the egg. And within that egg, then you'll be able to see like a spider's web, like a blood-red spider's web, or a solid chock of body, which is the developing chick. So after a week, you'll be able to see whether the eggs that you've got in the incubator or under a hen are fertile and are growing.
How do I do that then? With a candle?
Yeah, if you've got a really bright... Not with a candle. If you've got a really bright torch, you know, do it at night time, obviously, when it's dark, but get a really bright torch and put the egg over the top of the torch, and the light will shine up through the egg. You can get little devices, candling devices. You can buy a specific candling device.
But wouldn't want to do that.
No, so if you've got a torch already in the house, just use that, bright torch. One of those little bright... Those little sensor LEDs that Wiggly sells are very bright ones. If you put the egg on top of that so as the light shines through it.
Excellent. You can buy those at the Wiggly Wigglers website, www.wigglyWigglers.co.uk.
So you can
otherwise called a torch, but now they're called a candling device.
Are you planning to grow your own chickens and have a few of your own
Yes.
Get Farmer Phil plucking.
Absolutely. I've already had 12 eggs from eBay, which were unsuccessful.
But I think
Okay.
that your
Yeah.
timing comments have just indicated why they probably were unsuccessful, because we bought them in the wintertime.
It's a postage thing as well. Sometimes the eggs
bought
they
them
can
in
get
the summer.
damaged when they're rattling around in the post. Sometimes they can be good, sometimes they
Did we
can't.
buy them in the summer?
Yes.
No. Well, they didn't work.
And they're also expensive. I mean, the eggs on eBay, because there's loads of people bidding for certain clutches of eggs, you can get like a dozen 10 eggs cost you like 12, 15 quid.
Yes,
That's
they did.
madness.
Yes, they
Blimey,
did.
isn't it?
Yes, they did.
You need more money than sense
Yes,
to do that.
Yes,
don't
they
you?
did.
I think the best idea is to put some eggs on eBay myself.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah, put eggs on eBay. That's a good thing. But don't buy them off eBay. But that's like anything on eBay, really. It's not. It's a seller's market on eBay.
Did you see me on the telly? It's the
No, I
postal
heard about
strike
it,
today.
though. Heard about
Postal strike today. They have all walked out, and it means there's no Wiggly deliveries coming and no postal deliveries going. But
Right.
don't you worry, dear listener. You know we won't let you down. We will send your stuff through business post, through other carriers, but you will get your parcels. Darn them.
Darn them. What do you think the future of Royal Mail is then? I mean, what do you understand by the tactics of the employees and the unions at the moment? What's your sentiment?
I just despair. I really do. I just think, my gosh, have you not noticed that everything's changing? And if you're not competitive, you're going to get wiped out by those other people. And I just despair because people haven't got the time to continue with these arguments, and you just got to get on with it. And I don't know the detail, but I do know.
Well, that's the point. The employers and the unions, I've heard several interviews with both sides, and they cannot tell me what they're arguing about.
Right.
Not
I
that
heard
makes
from
the
a-
slightest sense.
I heard from a postman yesterday who said that the point was that he was going to be made part-time and change his contract of employment. Well, as far as I know, with Wigglers, we've had to change people's contract of employment. Those girls have had to alter how they work. They now have to do 12 Saturdays in the future. They've got less hours at some times a year. And that's what we have to do to be competitive. So,
Yeah.
what, from my point of view, as a mail order company, gosh,
It's
I'm worried
it's a difficult
because we
thing,
need
isn't
to
it?
get the orders out.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance to be had, but striking is unfortunate, and I'm not really sure it's the answer, is it?
I don't think so.
Well, I'd suggest, given that there seems to be competitors in the wings able to take on the business, that is a changed contract preferable to none at all.
Wise words, Farmer Phil.
Gosh, and now we've nearly finished. Oh,
I think before we should go, though, I've done that third part of the chicken run episodes, especially for my mate Richie Pike.
lovely. Well, why don't we have that now? And then next week we'll talk about Gambia is good.
Well, I don't think you can do that next week, because next week is going to be a slightly different format, I believe, so that we'll have to put Gambia is good to the week after.
Cool.
Oh, well, but
You're not in charge of everything.
really? Okay, chicken dinners.
Roll the tape, Michael.
I'm just filling up the corn bin. It's usually a weekend thing, or at least I try to make it a weekend thing, because there's nothing worse than coming down in the morning from the top of the field and realising you forgot to fill up the grain, and then having to spend more precious moments just before you scuttle off to work to fill up the wheat barrel. But I'm going to, what I'm going to do this time as well is I'm going to mix in a little bit of oil, just a little bit of vegetable oil, in with the wheat. I've got some poultry spice, and it just sticks to the wheat lovely. Years ago, when I was fish farming, we just used to mix up all sorts of medicated feeds, sort of oxalinic acid and oxytetracycline and all sorts of interesting antibiotics to treat the fish, because they used to get enteric red mouth and all sorts of hellish diseases. Really, most of the farm trout that people buy have had any kind of a serious disease at some point during their overstocked and highly stressed lives. We used to wet down the pellet with oil, and then sprinkle in the required dosage of white powder. And then I could feed the fish. And I do exactly the same with the chickens. I just mix it, and it just helps that the poultry spice to stick to the grain. I mean, another thing I've done with grain for the hens is to mix a little bit of diatomaceous earth in with the food, and I just think perhaps it gives them a little bit of a lift. It makes them more robust, and certainly feeding with DE and poultry spice does help them get over molting faster. It just adds that little bit of extra nutrition to their diet, and just equips them with the ability to recover from molting a bit quicker, and consequently, of course, they'll come on to lay a little bit sooner again. So yeah, it's worth that little just extra bit of expense and a little bit of time. Somewhere between the last recording and now, a friend of mine gave me some bantam cockerels. I asked him, did he mind what would happen to them ultimately? He said, no. So we've got a whole bunch of bantam cockerels kicking around at the moment, and of course they seem to have this kind of juvenile crowing competitions. They're pretty birds, but you just can't, you just can't, there's no point in keeping them. And consequently you can't get attached to them at all, so I suppose it's better to eat something that's attractive, though, than something that's unattractive. Unfortunately, our big cockerel, I had to dispatch because he became so aggressive, just unpleasant. And Sarah, you would go in the chicken run and get chased around the chicken run. And he started doing it to me, so that was it. And I did roast the old boy up, and despite the fact of a bit of slow roasting, he was still a bit rubbery. So Jack and George, our terriers, have done well off the back of that cockerel, but I'm seriously thinking about not doing any chicken breeding next year and just keeping a few hens. But there's probably no point in getting another cockerel. I mean, a cockerel in many respects does keep order amongst the hens, but I think we'll see how we go, and just keep our old lovely old light Sussex, and I've got a couple of little bantam hens and an Australorp. And a couple of warrens, so a little bit of a mix. I do like the light Sussex, though. They're such an attractive bird, and this time of year they've got their full autumnal plumage, having completed their molting, their late summer molting. They do look wonderful, so round and plump and clean feathered. How many eggs coming from the chickens at the moment? I have to say, a bit of a dry spell on the old laying front. I'll move their pen again soon, their run. They get a much larger run in the winter time because there's less grass growth, so they need a little bit more space to make the most of those scratching opportunities. You can hear the hens rattling around amongst the ash leaves around us. I've noticed even the big hens can get out from underneath the fence now that I did last year for the geese. I put all the chickens that we hatched this year in the geese run. That made a lot of sense to give the birds a lot more running room than they had originally. We had an incredible mite infestation in the chicken house earlier on in the summer, and the only way I could get rid of the mites was to creosote the hen house, and that did work. But they were everywhere. Just, they slipped under radar, and obviously hadn't cottoned on soon enough. But the birds went off the lay at the wrong time of the year, and there's something up here, So when I eventually got round to inspecting the hen house after a busy summer, I realised that all the little nooks and crannies and the edges of the roosts and the nest boxes were inundated with mites, some brown and some freshly red, having feasted on some poor unfortunate bird over the night. So anyway, they had to, the chickens that is, had to cope with the smell of creosote for a couple of days, but it certainly got rid of the mites. They don't like that one little bit. It is creosote substitute these days as well, so obviously some of the nasties that were in the original creosote aren't in there anymore, but it still serves to bump off mites, which is good. And preserve wood. The other condition the hens picked up was scaly legs, and again a mite of sorts that seems to burrow under the scales of the chicken's feet, and the scales sort of lift up. Their legs become a lot fatter and a lot untidier, a lot rougher looking. And originally we used surgical spirit, and it didn't seem to have much effect. But certainly when we put some Vaseline on the bantam's legs, certainly the one bantam she had these huge lumps on her legs, and I think they'd just grown over the time that she'd been broody. So we Vaselined her legs, and literally these these lumps of scales that had puffed up from the scaly mite fell off her legs completely, and healed up really quickly. So that Vaseline seems to be a winning formula. It certainly cleared up these old birds, a bit susceptible to it. I think once you've got it, it's very difficult to get rid of, though, and I think it probably sort of keeps coming back. Someone may be able to tell me otherwise, but we get reoccurrences of it, especially in the older birds. The younger birds don't seem to be as prone to scale mite. Well, it's pretty much the end of what's been a fabulous autumnal day. Birds are just stocking up now and filling their crops before they go to bed. It's important to make sure they have some tasty treats before bedtime. So from me and the chickens of Common Hill, I think that's a goodbye.
Lovely. I like your chicken doos,
Good.
Rich.
Good.
They're corking. So Gambia is good is not next week. It's the week after. But it is lovely. And we did have a lovely time. And if you want to buy something that benefits Gambia is good, go to our catalogue and you will see a micro garden. But you'll hear all about that next week. No, the week after. Episode 2001.
Or even 201.
Exactly. Bye from me.
Bye from me.
Bye from me.
Hey Rich, have you got a favourite product in the new Wiggly catalogue?
I have.
Oh, I
Have
bet he
you?
has.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Ross Savage.
Do you know, I really thought you were going to say Wiggloos, the product that you produce yourself.
The
But
Wiggloos,
no,
yeah.
Ross Savage. If you'd like to buy Ross Savage, she's only £15.
I'm sure she'd appreciate you saying that.
And we do take credit cards for her. And if you go to the Wiggly catalogue and look in the back, you'll see Ross in the available for purchase.
Very good.